I guess we can just get started with like a sort of general, like, how old are you? Where did you grow up? How was that until now? And just a general overview, I guess.
Hmm.
But yeah.
You wanna start now? Get into that, or are you?
Yeah, I mean, if you're ready.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I was just wondering if you recorded.
Yeah.
So yeah. Uh, yeah. So I'm not gonna dox my age. No, just kidding. I'm 30 years old. I live in the Netherlands.
Mm,
I grew up in a small town in the Netherlands, predominantly like 100% white. It
right.
was we had one black dude, and everybody thought he was like a thief because fucking racist. Yeah, besides that, I grew up in a Catholic school, but all schools are kind of some sort of religion over here, pretty
Right.
much. That
Hmm.
being said, it was not strict Catholic.
Right.
From there, yeah, high school, went to a Montessori school. Um, and after that, yeah, university, that kind of stuff.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, for some reason, like it seems like a lot of people who are getting like in this specific sort of, you know, liberal progressive but not like leftist sort of space, a lot of the online people seem to have like come from a conservative background. At least something I've
Mm.
noticed, which I think is interesting. I guess generally, like, how was your experience kind of growing up in that area? Were you also conservative at that time, or yeah?
No, I've never been really conservative, but because the things that I grew up with, as in, I'm like extremely dyslexic.
Hmm.
I couldn't speak like properly until I was 7, so I
Oh,
couldn't
wow.
form like sentences. Um, and yeah, that kind of pushed me into a direction that, well, it's important that you struggle in life, so to speak, right? That doesn't mean that you cannot be supported, right? So
Right.
that's a little bit about the social liberal like philosophy that I support.
Right.
Um, Thinking that, yeah, basically you need to have like some sort of support structure in society, um, and the bootstraps arguments only go that far, you know. So yeah,
I see.
yeah.
Yeah. So, so from my understanding, I'm assuming after university, you started getting involved in like local politics, and eventually you kind of made the move here
Uh,
to Twitch.
no, what I did was like I actually during high school,
Mhm.
I went into politics. I was 15 years
Oh,
when I
wow.
became like a member. Uh, so it's not like I'm elected official, but I was
Right.
15 years when I joined like a political party, and from there on out, I got elected from when I was 18 till 22.
Mhm.
When I did like local politics. After that, I kind of quit doing like local politics, but I did support the political party, which is, by the
Hmm.
way, the second biggest party within the
Oh, yeah.
Netherlands. So it's
Cool.
um, I've
Nice.
wrote like at this point I wrote like 8 like different like local programs, like the full like
Wow.
election programs. I did that kind of stuff, which was interesting. But yeah, yeah. That being said, like I kind of moved on from that. Um, why I probably will return in the future, but I haven't done that much with like the local politics in the last like 2 3 years. But
Right.
yeah.
I see. Um, yeah, I see. I guess like for me, a lot of the times when I'm like a lot of the times when I talk to like my friends or people who are like near me, like in real life,
Mhm.
a lot of them are more like they aren't super engaged in politics or they weren't for like a very long time, which is why I always find it really interesting to talk to people online who have seem to have been engaged in politics, like you said, from like since you were 15, right? um so I guess like
Yeah,
how did that sort
I
of idea, or go ahead.
yeah, because I don't understand the question before you were going. But yeah, sorry to cut you off. Um,
Yeah, go.
yeah, so basically, I had a granddad who was kind of obsessed with World War II,
Mhm.
because he, it, I we don't really know what he did, but it was not like he was some high like resistance member. But
Right.
he did stuff to help out like Jewish people uh,
Oh wow.
um, in the war, like minor things. So
Mm.
um, he took me at a young age. He took me to every museum.
Mhm.
So I've seen like loads of stuff, and
Right.
like that also inspired me to have more of like an interest in social stuff, in
Right.
culture, in history. That sort of thing
I see.
inspired me. So
So
yeah,
yeah.
and besides that, like the whole thing that I told you about, like being dyslexic.
Hmm.
Um, so also thinking that some things are unfair in the world
Right.
and want to make it just right.
Yeah.
That inspired me.
Yeah. Yeah, I see what you mean. Uh, so I guess partially just that the hardships that you have to face, and I assume continue to face, kind of pushed you to try to help more people in in those areas and in general. And also, like it seems like your family kind of has a little bit of this, I guess, political streak, or are interested in politics in some regard. I guess I don't know if you can
Mm.
call it politics at that point, like I don't know, because like yeah, like I guess it's technically like political, but like say like helping,
Mm.
Jewish people during World War II, like it I, I don't know, it seems weird to group that in with, like, writing policies and stuff. Both are important, but it seems like yeah, but
Yeah, at some point it's like more like human decency,
yeah,
or
basically.
it's more like social stuff, and yeah.
Mhm.
So yeah.
um but yeah, so that's interesting. I guess we can start by, I guess, um so of course, if any of this is like too personal, or you're worried about like revealing details or whatever, then you can always just tell me.
No, don't
um
worry about it.
yeah, so
It's okay.
I guess like we can probably start by going and asking about like how did um so you said until like you were 7 years old you couldn't like speak properly, right? Was that like
Mhm.
a stutter, or was it like a severe sort of issue, or what was
It,
the?
it it was I couldn't pronounce words correct. I
I see.
couldn't form sentences.
Mhm.
I couldn't do any grammatical stuff.
Wow, I see.
So I had like, it was like, imagine that if I am walking to school, I
Mhm.
would say school walking I. That
Okay.
that's how I was talking until
Right.
I was 7, and then I got over there. But yeah.
um how did that, how was it, how did that feel when you're like, because I feel like those first few years can be really like impactful, right? So how did,
Mhm.
like, how did those, I mean, it's probably hard to remember to a large extent, but like how did those years kind of feel when you felt like, you had trouble even like communicating your thoughts and all?
Yeah, well, the reason that I want to communicate that much nowadays is because of the fact that I couldn't back then. Like, it
Mm,
feels like really annoying if you cannot communicate something, and you,
right.
you even being like, uh, yeah, made fun of. Like, I'm
Mm,
not gonna say like I'm bullied or something, but
right.
that being said, uh, like it it yeah, you feel like, if you know how kids are, so they gaslight you, or they put words in your mouth,
Yeah.
that's how. And if you cannot combat that, if you're not uh
Yeah.
yeah, up to par, that you feel like left out and kind of shit. And that also makes you like think like, how can I structure this in the most effective manner and say stuff in the future, and you're
Right.
grinding those gears in your head as like a young kid more than I assume the older kid.
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah, definitely. It seems like a very, like, if I imagine how like uh um how like a kid who doesn't have to like doesn't have to deal with those issues would think, like, at least I guess I can't know, but when I talk with, like, family friends, or like cousins, like children or whatever, of that age, like it seems like they basically just say, whatever comes to their mind without really thinking about it. But on your hand, you kind of really had to like you had to focus on that even from like a really young age, right? Um, and so how how did you kind of work through that or get over that um afterwards?
Um, yeah, so I had several things. I had several like assistants.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, so I had like a what you call it, logopedist. So it's somebody that works with like the vocal stuff to actually like pronounce stuff
Right.
and
Like a
um,
speech coach?
yeah, but
Okay.
then somebody that went to university for that.
Oh,
So
okay.
not like. But then I had also more coaching with other stuff. So more like extra learning
Mm,
stuff. So uh, after school, that kind of shit, to
right.
keep me up to par with like the other kids. Um, so
Right.
yeah, I also, they at some point they also did like intelligence check, because you cannot, if you are
Hard to
dumb,
tell, yeah.
right, you cannot also not force a child. So it's like, so but that was all okay,
Right.
it was not
Mm.
like I was um like dumb or something, or that I had like even more
Yeah.
like disabilities that they didn't know of.
Yeah, it was just like the speech thing, right?
Hmm.
Um I see. Yeah, I mean, so I have some friends who went through in India, or I don't know if this is in all Indian schools, but in my school there was like a program called SEN, which is special educational needs, right? For like primary school kids and stuff like that. And so I mean the idea is, pretty straightforward. Just kids who need some extra educational support and whatnot would get that support if they need it. And I think like it's obviously it's probably it's not necessarily for kids who have as extreme condition as you had, but um, I from what I heard, it seems like that splitting, well, obviously it's helpful and required for kids who might need that extra help for whatever reason. It does also create a
Hmm.
very isolationist sort of effect. So I guess, did you stay in like the same school even after you started getting better, or like how did that social situation change as you kind of,
Oh,
yeah,
I went just to a normal school. To be fair, I don't
yeah,
went to
yeah,
like a special needs school or something like that. Um,
yeah, I mean like,
I
uh
so
I
I
meant,
just
sorry,
stayed in
go
that
ahead.
school. I just
Right.
stayed in that school. Um,
Yeah, I
but
meant
yeah.
more like, if you have like a lot of kids who remember you as like, the kid who couldn't talk or whatever, like that might be
Mhm.
difficult. So I thought like maybe your parents might have shifted your schools. Like that's what I was getting at. But it seems like that wasn't the case, or for whatever reason
Oh,
you're,
so if no, that would be like pretty troublesome, because
mm,
if like there's like a local level, right, of like government, and it's basically like you should have like a school somewhere in that local area.
right.
And if I moved from one school to another school, and because of the fact that I got bullied or something,
Mhm.
because whatever.
Right.
And then when I come to the next school, that they're gonna be like, "Oh, that's the kid that got bullied on another school." So
Right.
then you're already like a prime target from the
I
first
see.
start. So it doesn't really help, because
I
I
see. Yeah.
remember one guy coming to my uh, school, and exactly that happened to him. So
Mm,
yeah.
I see. Yeah. So I guess in that case, like I guess probably for some time you had to like kind of combat that stigma or view of you over time, right?
Mhm.
So was that like obviously it was difficult, but, like how did that go for you, I guess?
Oh yeah, well you get like more sharp, and once you grow up, you go to another school. And once I got to the high school,
Right.
I was like, I was pretty accepted there, and I was
Mhm.
pretty actually like, I wouldn't say like super popular, but I was alright. So it was pretty much like a good time over there.
Oh, that's
And
good.
yeah, so yeah, that helped a lot. And I just went to a school that was further away from most high schools, So I
Hmm.
also didn't have that much of the people that were like in elementary school.
Right.
So yeah, and honestly like I kind of wanted that as well. Like not specifically because I hated those people or something, but I was like I wanted to have like adventure more
Right.
and
It's like a
go
fresh
to
slice, sort of.
yeah. So yeah.
I see. Yeah. Yeah. I guess like I think how do I say this? Um. So
Uh, can I ask you a question? Like
yeah. Go ahead.
you did you grow up in India
Mhm.
or how did that work? Like what was the story of you?
Yeah. So I was born in New Jersey, in America. So then I stayed there. I stayed there until third grade or until second grade, and then in third grade I moved to India, in
Mhm.
Hyderabad, which is kind of like south center, sort of. And yeah, so and then I stayed there until high school ended, and now that I'm in college, I've moved back to the U.S., but now I'm in Seattle.
Mhm. That must be
Yeah,
like interesting as well.
yeah.
Is it like what's your first language? Like
Oh, my first language is still English. I obviously learned it in America, and
mhm.
like and a lot of the Indian schools and stuff. I get it depends on how wealthy you are and stuff, but very few people actually go to like the public schools if they can afford it, if they can afford not to send their kids there. That is, just because the public schools in India aren't like that good, right? So the school I went to was English speaking. So I was mainly English, but my family speaks like Telugu, which
Mm.
is yeah. So that's like my second language or whatever. But yeah.
Yeah, why I'm asking that is because like if you wanna um, like explain my situation,
Mhm.
you gotta imagine that you are bilingual and you're talking in your second language. That's how
Right.
it felt growing up. So
I see.
that's
Yeah,
so
I
yeah,
always.
or going into Twitch politics for the first time and not knowing what you get yourself into. Um, that's a bit like the same as well. All these people that use like lingo that you're like, "Oh, what the fuck is based, or something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm really bad at languages. That's probably one of my bigger like weaknesses in like academically speaking or whatever. So even like Telugu and stuff, I'm like not the best speaker in those languages. Fortunately, obviously, most of the people I talk to speak English, which I'm fine at. Um, but yeah, I can't imagine. but uh, but yeah, I guess as we kind of get at like right now, we're just kind of taking a walk through your childhood and early young adult years and whatnot.
Mm.
So I guess like as you got older, you started getting into politics and stuff, right? So once you turned 15, so that would probably be like beginning of high school. Um,
Uh, yeah, middle
okay,
somewhere.
right, okay.
So yeah, so actually we had like a in the Netherlands we had an assassination happen around when I was 11 years old,
Hmm.
and that impacted like a lot of people. The dude
Oh,
was like addressing like immigration problems, and that was at the time just even mentioning immigration was like a taboo topic,
right,
and I remember um, knowing what the guy said. I didn't agree with the guy
right.
around his like immigration policies and that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
But the fact that he was addressing that and got so many pushback was crazy as well because he was just saying like we need to make sure that people integrate within society. People cannot live next to each other and not even be able to communicate. That kind
Right.
of stuff.
Oh,
Um,
I see.
so that also had like an impact, but then I was thinking, well, the solution should be different, and that's why I actually went to another party and
Hmm. Right.
joined that party.
Yeah. So I guess you kind of saw like, oh, this is sort of an issue which is happening with like politics and stuff, and I guess you wanted to take a step to try to like fix that, and you went to the party, obviously, which you supported the most.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I just became member in the
Mm,
idea of like, well, the party, the party now is the second biggest party in the Netherlands,
mm.
but back then the party was on 0 seats, and
Oh.
it was like the issue there was that the party itself had like a lot of issues with like, well, it wasn't like scandals, but it was more
Mm,
like they they did some dumb political they made some dumb political choices, and everybody was
right.
like, what the fuck are you guys doing? But
Mm,
then again, I was like, this is the only like social liberal party within the Netherlands, the
right.
only party that actually wants to invest in education. So
Right.
I'm like, I'm not gonna let this party fall. So I became member of that political party,
I see.
and then the day after, the the like the highest person, like the, I don't know what you call it, but
Mhm.
anyways, the highest member of the local party basically called me up, and he was like almost asking me, why did you become member? I don't understand, why? And
Right.
it's almost, he was like, yeah, welcome to the party. Yeah, why did you become? So it was, he
Like
he
we don't get
didn't
a lot of
understand it.
people, yeah.
So yeah, but then yeah, I became a member, and he invited me straight away to come.
Hmm.
Uh, so there I go, 15 years old,
Yeah.
in a room with all these 70-year-old like boomers, because local
Wow.
politics it be like that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and
I
then
mean,
yeah.
so like, yeah, I feel like that's like a very, um, I feel like that's like a very big step. Like I couldn't imagine doing something like that in my, when I was in high school. Um, so like, I guess like, did you kind of have stuff building up to that? Like, did you have like, initially, you're just talking with your friends about politics, or like how did you kind of reach that point where you decided like I actually want to join like local politics?
Um, yeah, well, it was that event, and it was like the grandpa that I had,
Hmm.
the so-called struggles. I had, can
Right.
nuance it because other people have a way voice. Like, let's be fair. So all those things came together, and then I thought, like, well, the party is dying, so I might as well become a member before it's too late.
Right.
And from there on out, yeah, it just it just went. And
So
honestly, like, I always enjoyed it. So
that's
yeah.
good. So you had like a sense of like urgency to, because like you didn't know if the party would be there when you turned 18 or whatever, essentially, right? Or
Yeah, I was the youngest political candidate from that election. So there you go. In the
yeah,
in
wow.
the country. So,
Oh
and that's
wow.
like,
That's
there are like 10,000 candidates.
mhm.
So
Yeah, that's
so and there you go.
pretty amazing. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, so uh, just to make sure I got the timeline clear, you joined the party when you were 15. You kind of probably did
Hmm.
some different like different party work and whatnot until 18. 18, you entered in the election. You got elected until you served until you were 22, and then you
Yeah.
stopped basically, right? Um,
Yeah. I had 1 year, some sort of a gap year, where I went to England, where somebody
hmm,
else replaced me.
right.
Um, that being said, yeah, you're correct there. And I was, what I did was, you have like the council members, and you
Mhm.
have like the boards, the different boards. So
Right.
I was part of like health the health board.
I see.
That was what I did. So yeah,
Mhm.
there was a lot of like, at that point we needed to do like a lot of reconstruction, because of the fact that uh, there wasn't that much money coming in due to the financial crisis, or the housing crisis, whatever you want to call it.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Right.
and I learned a lot from there. So
Yeah.
you can imagine being 18 years
Yeah.
old. Like,
Yeah. You're
most people don't understand shit about that. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it feels like you're definitely in a space where uh everybody else probably knows a lot more in the beginning at least, right? Um, but 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 yeah,
To be
uh,
fair, in this political online space, if you read one article about most subjects, you know more than most people. So
yeah,
uh,
that's true.
there you go.
Yeah, I was actually really surprised. Okay, this is a little off topic, but so like for the Russia Ukraine stuff, I was like, I got into the habit of reading New York Times every morning because I had to for some class, right? Um, so this was last quarter, so just a few months ago, and that was obviously when all these tensions were like there and everything, right? So there's a lot of talk about it in the news and whatnot. So I thought like, oh shit, this is like a big deal, right? And then like several months later, I see tweets where people are just like shocked that this happened. Which I mean, if you don't follow news, that's fine, right? But like I was just like really confused. Like um, people like there's been news about this for like 3 months. Like why don't you know that this was happening, right? Um, Especially if you're like a
Yeah,
political content creator. But
yeah.
yeah,
So we in the Netherlands in 2016 we had like a referendum around Ukraine
mm,
because Ukraine signed a deal with the Netherlands
right,
or with the European Union, and what like some far right parties did was like basically they wanted to annoy the European Union
mm,
because if you sign a contract within like from the European Union with Ukraine,
mm,
it also needs to be ratified within the Netherlands. So they
mm,
wanted to annoy the European Union by calling a referendum on that
right, wow,
international agreement. So yeah, and that was about like the association treaty with Ukraine.
mm,
So uh, from there on out, I looked into Ukraine. So I was I was way more on up to date when it came to this fucking discussion before all these people. And yeah, honestly, the first day of the war, when all these Twitch streamers came out of the woodwork, they had some wild takes. They had some
yeah.
wild claims. They
Like, oh, this is just
and
like fake news or whatever, like random stuff. Yeah. Uh,
yeah.
it was really crazy. And yeah, I don't know. It feels like it's just like completely different worlds. Like I'll read the news and I'll see something and I'll be like, oh, holy shit, this is like actually like really crazy. Like I think at that time, the New York Times, some reporter or some group of reporters dropped like this big like bombshell thing about the Pentagon and how it um and like essentially how it doesn't really keep track of its civilian casualties and whatnot properly and doesn't really audit itself properly. And like so I thought that was like a really big deal. Like even in the newspaper, it was like all caps, you know, on the headline, like you know. But like yeah, I just didn't see any talk about it at that time, which I was kind of surprised by. Um,
It it was just also the reporting, like the reporting within the US about it was so weird. Like when it just
mm,
before the war, it was almost like the US trying to say with their coverage of Ukraine, like Putin try it out, you know.
yeah,
It was kind of like he's going to invade. We know he's going to invade it, and it was like it was kind of weird, like how the news was published, and I was like, I. But that being said, like I totally understand that now in the hindsight because of the fact that now we've been like covering this topic for 2 weeks, and you see that people are slowly getting the right takes, and that people are not saying like dumb shit anymore.
right.
Um, so
Yeah, I see.
yeah, because
Um,
it's like a really American centric take, and
mm,
like I discussed Ukraine with so many people, and there were people that were saying, well, if you look at Lukashenko, he is not a great guy either. So and then was like, huh? And then they were talking about Belarus. So suddenly it's like, well, I don't like China because Modi, that's not a great person.
Yeah.
It's like, huh? What the fuck are you saying? So people didn't even know, they couldn't even point it on the map, So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely it is very strange.
Hmm.
At that time. But yeah, I guess uh going back from that uh
Hmm.
yeah, so like the problem I'm facing here is that it seems like where your values and everything came from is very straightforward, right? Like obviously it's
Yeah.
so there's not much for me to ask about them. Um but but yeah, I guess like we can continue moving forward, I
Hmm.
guess, through like so after you know your after that stint in local politics, what kind of made you decide to kind of switch to something else, or what did you switch to at that time?
Yeah. First of all, I kind of I switched to studying. First of all,
All right.
but second of all, I after being like 4 years in politics, or like
Mm,
3 years, if you consider that 1 year that was in London,
mm,
um, like I was like, well, this is all fun and games, but I need to get to understand politics more and more,
mhm,
because the issue here is that once you get elected, or you are in like some sort of capacity involved in local politics,
mhm.
and people are going to ask you questions, you are
Right.
supposed to know every answer, because if
Right.
you don't know, you
I
look
see.
weak. But the the,
Mm,
the issue with like local politics is that there are like 2000 plus like institutions, so
right. Yeah.
you don't you cannot know everything.
Mm,
So I felt like sometimes you needed to actually bullshit people around like a topic that you didn't know about,
mm.
and I didn't feel like comfortable doing that.
Yeah, for sure.
So I was like, yeah, well, I'm gonna take a step back, and then I'm gonna also like educate myself more on certain things. And yeah, also I didn't get paid for it either, so it was not like that of yeah.
Yeah,
uh,
I see.
that be Yeah, that being said, like I helped them out,
Mm.
uh, during elections, like the not this election, but because this election is in a couple of days.
Oh,
But
okay.
the election that was before this, I wrote like five programs on local levels.
Mhm.
Um,
Wow.
and then I was like, yeah, what do I need to do now? Because have been like doing all these different like positions,
Mhm.
and honestly, at this point, the only like position that I might want to consider is like becoming like the head of the party in the local. And I'm
Right.
like, well, that's not gonna happen because they don't know me here that well. They know me like the place that I grew up. They know me very well,
Mhm.
but not necessarily here. So,
Right.
and then I was like, I would I would look just like silly if I were to run for something like that. So
I see.
yeah, so because
Yeah.
the other positions I already did, so for me there was no interest in doing some of those positions. So
Mhm.
um and
I see.
then in the meanwhile I was just still watching Twitch. So yeah, then I watched like a lot of like social shows. So I
R-
watched like you might remember the Raj Patel show,
Oh, yeah.
uh
Yeah.
so the Austin show nowadays.
Mhm.
I watched a lot of that, and I thought that was fun.
Yeah.
So yeah, some point I went on, I went on the site, and yeah, made an account, and then I saw somebody streaming in the politics section, and
Mm.
he called it the Raj Patel after show, and that
Right.
was Freems basically,
Mhm.
and Freems did panel shows.
Right.
So, and his panel shows were political.
Mhm.
So that's how I became a chatter. So in like political streams. So but now you have the issue. You cannot talk with these people because you're in a fucking chat room and they won't address you because they're on a fucking panel.
I see. Yeah.
So yeah. So now you realize, how can I reach out to these people? These people won't even want to talk to me if I'm not a streamer. So then
Yeah.
you got to stream in the political section just to get to talk to them, you
Yeah.
know? So, and that's where the streaming started. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so like it was just kind of I want to like you saw a bunch of bad takes or whatever in these sorts of panel shows and stuff, and you kind of wanted to try to change these people's minds, especially because they have like a big reach, right? uh I guess.
Hmm. Yeah, it's just that you see that people are talking on streams, and you can only engage it so much. And
Mhm.
if you actually, like with the Ukraine stuff, I've been saying a long time, like to people, if you want to talk about European politics, just ask me.
Right.
So and people were ignoring that for the longest time,
Mhm.
uh,
Yeah.
until like some people picked it up because of the fact that I started to debate on open panels about like
Mhm.
European politics or other kinds of politics. So
Right. I
because
see.
I genuinely want to have like people to have like an informed opinion about something, not just my opinion, you know. So
Yeah, I understand. Like just at least get these like basic facts correct. Like you can disagree with me or whatever, but like just don't be like somewhere into like some fantasy. um
yeah, so like again, like even like professors in the US, like get that Mearsheimer guy,
mhm.
like if you read like texts of him, it's or his books or whatever, you can just read like the American centric bias drips off of that, and not in the sense that it's just bias, but it's also just like factually like incorrect sometimes. So
Mhm.
it's actually that he doesn't know what he's talking about. And if a professor has that, you can imagine that how many like
Yeah, for sure.
bad takes there are on Twitch politics, you know?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. um yeah, I mean, it's yeah, it feels kind of it feels weird in like a American university to like I did a little bit of international relations stuff last quarter, which is why I had to read the New York Times stuff. um
Hmm.
Fortunately, we didn't talk that much about Russia, Ukraine that time. We were mostly focusing on America and China, that conflict.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I guess like I think okay, so I don't know how to phrase this. Like, I think it's if you want to just focus on like American stuff and like talk about that as an academic, I think that's fine, right?
Hmm.
Like you can focus on what you want. I guess like I think the problem comes where you're trying to understand this in a holistic manner, but then you're just missing out on like a bunch of perspectives and things like that. And that's kind of where I think the issue comes. Right. Um,
Yeah, and for me personally, when I first came on like Twitch politics, besides like the lingo that they have, right?
mhm,
Besides all of that stuff, I
right.
needed to learn a lot of different stuff from Americans as well.
Right.
So because of the fact that Americans use language in a different way
Mhm,
than most Europeans, like Dutch are very blunt, very open, very straight to the point. Uh, Americans not so. So if you're
yeah.
gonna be like very open, very blunt, you are going to look aggressive. So I would say something in the best intended manner,
Mhm,
but
yeah.
then it's like, oh, this is a fucking asshole, you know? This
Yeah.
guy is coming after me, uh, and it's like, no, 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 that's not what I was doing, you know? So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
so yeah.
I remember I had to make that adjustment when I came from India to the US again, because even in India, even though like my school was English speaking, it was like British English, right? So a lot of the stuff kind of came from there, and a lot of like the favorite our favorite teachers and everything were like really blunt and really direct and stuff, which was always fun. Um, and yeah, it's definitely been a very big shift in kind of understanding how like Americans communicate. Um, okay, this is random, but have you seen the show called Succession?
Nope, I haven't. By the way, I can still hear you, but I'm gonna get a drink. So yeah,
Oh, can
so
you?
you can talk about that. So I can
Okay.
still hear you. Yeah, I'm
Oh.
not walking away, and then it's like, have you heard about the show Succession? Nope. You know, like
Yeah.
that. So
Okay.
yeah.
Um, But yeah, so Succession, basically the idea behind the show is it's one of those shows where they talk about like, oh, all these rich people sort of thing. Essentially there's this one rich guy and all of his kids are trying to get his like place as the CEO and whatever. And the plot like is I haven't looked seen too much of it, but that's not like what I want to talk about. What's really interesting is how the dialogue is constructed. So the dialogue is very sort of roundabout. It's very sort of, oh, I'm not necessarily saying this. It's like it seems like I guess it seems almost very American, but taken to the extreme in that like they're just very scared of saying anything basically directly. So they have to say it in this roundabout sort of business like tone. Which yeah, I just found it really interesting to like hear it because it feels like I don't know, it feels really strange to hear. Because obviously there's all these undertones and everyone's trying to avoid them and whatnot. Um, but yeah.
Yeah, so I was thinking about like because I had this happen once when I was like doing a panel as a host, and what happened was like there was one person who said like cancel culture,
Right.
and this person just meant it more in like a descriptive or like just describing
Right.
cancel culture just general.
Mm-hmm.
So when are you going to cancel somebody? But somebody else on the panel that was like leaning a little bit more left was
Right.
like you are doing the right wing like dog whistle, saying
Right.
that this is cancel culture or something, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a bit like that. So
Right.
it's like a lot of these terms, how these terms are being used. Sometimes these terms are like we don't have that much dog whistles here in the Netherlands because we just say it. We say every
Yeah.
word. We don't have c words, n words. That doesn't exist in the
Mm-hmm.
Netherlands. So we say all those words, and for politicians don't get censored on nobody gets censored on TV. So
Right.
that happens. So people are just generally more masked off all the time, and
Mm-hmm.
with the U.S. politics, uh, it's not like that. I wonder,
Right.
however, how it is in India because I think
Yeah.
like
Uh,
like like I when I see like videos about like uh, about YouTube in India, people are generally like very friendly, but they want something from you. You know, it's like so. I
yeah.
don't
I mean,
I don't know how that works, but yeah.
yeah, it depends on where you go, but I think in a general sense, politics is very, very honest, which can be to a detriment a little bit. Like, okay, I actually don't know if this is something people know about outside of India, but there's this news host or whatever called Arnab Goswami. If you look up, like, he's obviously talking in like Hindi or Telugu or whatever, so you probably won't understand what he's saying. But if you just look up and watch one of his videos, or a segment, you'll understand what I mean immediately. Like, like people will literally just be shouting at each other, getting really, really mad. But and like obviously, you know, you shouldn't be like so much conflict or whatever, but it's kind of nice to see people like I care about this and you know I'm willing to show it sort of thing, right?
They
Um,
have like videos about like the Indian Parliament where they are all fighting with each other, right? Didn't
yeah,
they? Or is that? I think it was India. I'm not quite sure, but I thought
yeah,
it was India, and it's like just so funny to see like politicians fight. Like
yeah,
there is something about that. It's like so weird. Yeah.
yeah. At the same, like it's weird because on one hand there are these like super passionate people who really care about what they're talking about, but on the other hand there's like a lot of corruption in India, especially when it comes to police. Like it's basically just de facto assumed that if you like get caught by a cop or whatever, you can just bribe him and leave, right?
Mm.
And that's just like normal. It's not like considered, you know, bad, or people are fine like openly talking about like, oh yeah, that guy like caught me for speeding, but I just bribed him and I went like whatever. So yeah, it's a really I wasn't that involved in politics when I was in India, a little bit, but not that much. But it was like a really weird sort of dichotomy. I get it's like pair like having this corruption and also having this like passion at the same time.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't know. Probably someone like smarter than me can explain why or how or whatever. But yeah, it's just
Well, but I, as far as what I know about Indian politics, is like it's also a little bit of like a family business, right?
yeah,
Like that's what I heard.
yeah,
Like
definitely.
the party of like, was it like Gandhi? Like every
Yeah. I
like
mean,
a relative is just basically like running the party there or something. I don't know how that works.
yeah, yeah. So that's one party. I don't think they're that popular right now, though. So one like Modi, he became really popular. I remember at the time, like they made a really big deal of how he was just like a janitor in the BJP like office room or rooms or whatever, and he kind of grew from there. I don't know how much truth there is to that, but like that was the kind of image he put on. He kind of like came from like came from the slums or whatever, and he made it all the way up, sort of thing.
Yeah, a bit like how Trump only had like a small loan, right?
Yeah,
Just yeah, we
yeah,
don't. I don't know either, like about the Indian dude, but yeah.
yeah. Yeah. I never checked if that was like valid or not, but I know that that was a really strong like rhetorical thing he was pushing at the time. Um, and yeah, so I think like there's definitely that sort of family nepotism and whatnot in like in India in general, really, not even just in Indian politics, but like it seems like to a certain extent people kind of do want to see something different as well.
Yeah. So what the problem, the major problem when it comes to the Dutch politics is that recently it's like increasingly like more difficult for parliament members to actually get the right information from the cabinet.
Hmm.
So it's like a dual system. So
Right.
they are supposed to like the parliament is supposed to like get the government in line, but they cannot get the information.
Right.
So
I see.
what happened? What happened in the Netherlands is that there was like one parliamentarian, and he was like, "Well, this shit fucking sucks," and I'm going around the system, and I'm gonna ask the same questions that I asked like in Parliament. I'm gonna ask them in some sort of like thing for journalists, and he
Hmm.
got more answers there than he got
Oh
in the
wow.
fucking Parliament. And
Yeah.
then he was like, "This is messed up." So yeah, we are dealing with that kind of shit over here.
Hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. One I guess one thing that's like interesting, I guess, is like when you say we. So like if I were to think about, oh, this problem is happening in like the USA, sometimes people say we, and sometimes people say like we're dealing with this problem, and sometimes people just say like, oh, the Democrats are dealing with this problem, or so and so party or this group or whatever.
Hmm.
So I guess like um this is a kind of abstract question, but like do you do you feel like there's any like particular reason why you have that association? I guess because you participated,
I
but yeah.
uh, yeah, well, I think when I say we, I mean it as Dutch, as in the Dutch, and I think that's also there's like in Europe, national identity there still plays a big major role
Mhm.
in politics,
Right.
and like people in the US sometimes think that they look at Europe and they say like, oh, that's the European Union.
Right. Yeah.
They're already like the US or something, and
Mm.
it's nothing like that. Because I
Yeah.
live like 5 miles from the German border, but I only go once or twice to Germany every year,
Right.
or or I just cross the border to tank uh, tank some gas, which is
Right.
cheaper over there. That's the only thing, right? So, but that being said, like, so we don't cross the border, and you can immediately see when you cross the border, people immediately start to talk German. It's like German houses
Mm.
and all that kind of stuff. So that there is like, so yeah, and yeah, so I think that if I talk about we in comparison to when you have like people from the United States, there it's like especially amongst Democrats.
Right.
I don't think that. there is a part of the Democrats that are like not thinking that they are from the United States, or they don't feel American, or they don't feel like from the United States. They
Yeah.
feel that they representing something else. So
Uh,
they are like 15% Italian and 12%
yeah.
Swedish.
I think
Uh,
I
that kind
think
of
yeah.
silly shit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think like there's um it's hard to say. I mean, I haven't been in the US for that long, so I can't tell like definitively, but it seems like, generally people in the US don't have a very strong conception of like people um who are, because people are so focused on the US, it's very hard to say like, okay, I see these like outside people and I see myself and I can separate myself, right? um
Hmm.
and like, so at least when it comes to like national identity, so I think like I've definitely heard a lot more of like, oh, I'm just a global citizen, or whatever type of stuff in the US as opposed to like in other areas. um but that's just my experience. I don't have like data or anything to back that up.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I guess I guess getting back on track, it it sounds pretty cool to say that you kind of joined this party, which was we're backing up a long way, but
Yeah.
it seems kind of cool to say that you like joined this party when it had like 0 seats, and now it's the second biggest party in the country. So how does
I
that feel
mean,
for you?
since I joined, it's only going up. So
Yeah.
I don't want to make any conclusions, but no, just kidding. But uh, the party used to be like bigger as well. It used to be like
Hmm.
the third or the fourth party.
Hmm.
That's genuinely where they stood.
Right.
So that being said, like we at that point we had like a Christian Democrat in power. So you like imagine Merkel, but then the Merkel of the Dutch.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so
Mm-hmm.
the Balkenende was the person, and um, this dude didn't do shit. Like he was just sitting there on the seat, and he was like, "We're not gonna change anything because we're not either progressive or like free conservative. So we're
Yeah.
just gonna sit here and just."
Keep
And
things the same. Yeah.
from a perspective, from a liberal perspective, you always want to change up stuff. You're right. You want
Yeah.
to make it so that
Improve.
certain things are better, even like social issues, uh, yeah. So like my party pushed for gay marriage. So and we were one of the first countries where you could have like a, a gay marriage on paper in the world. So
Yeah.
um, yeah, that kind of stuff. So because of the fact that that other party wasn't doing shit,
Mhm.
my party was like proposing like certain stuff, and everybody was like, "Come on, we gotta change things up." So that's what my party
I
made them
see.
more
Yeah.
popular. And then
Hmm.
after after like 2011, no, I I'm getting my timelines mixed up. But after the assassination of like Pim Fortuyn, we got like a lot of like right wing parties
Right.
as well. So I don't know if you're familiar with Geert Wilders.
No, I'm not familiar.
Well, yeah, he's like he has his hair bleached, and the dude is like basically like far right. So
Mhm.
far right dude, and that also made my party popular because we are the opposite of that.
Yeah,
Like
I see.
so 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 we had like a charismatic leader that could take on him, and the rest of the parliament they couldn't take him on because they were somewhere split in the middle on
Yeah,
issues. So yeah.
I see. Yeah, so you guys were able to form like a strong opposition to that sort of rising right wing parties. Um,
Mm.
I see. Yeah, I guess. So, I mean, I guess I'm just curious, like, how does it feel for you personally? I mean, obviously, it must feel good, because obviously the things which you're supporting is much larger.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it does feel good, but then at the same time, we have like 30% of all the voters vote for far right parties as well, so
Mm.
they have more power, but the far right got way more power in comparison. So
Oh, I see.
it's not looking that good. We have one dude who's even more far right than the Geert Wilders dude,
Hmm.
uh, be, and he said that Russia's invasion of Ukraine is just because of the
Oh,
fact that he believes in still the idea around like what I told you, like around like identities of like Europe, right?
right. Yeah.
That the your identity should be focused on the people that live in like
Mhm.
live in that area. So every Russian person should be part of Russia,
Right. Yeah.
so that's what he believes. So he says that he sees like the eastern part of Ukraine. That's like a lot of Russians live there. So he's like, well, Russia
Oh,
is
yeah.
justified to
I've
invade
heard
that.
that idea.
That's
Yeah.
so
Uh,
the blood and soul argument. That's the argument, and that comes from the idea of like the nation state. So and that also, if you're going to drill that down, it's basically thinking that in some way or shape, like your country's people are like superior to another country's people. That's generally what it comes down to.
mm. Yeah.
So
I
yeah,
mean,
pretty racist.
yeah. I mean, it's
Pretty much.
interesting to hear that, like, especially because Netherlands was so close to Germany and all. And Germany did like similar stuff. Well, not the exact same thing, but similar stuff with like the city and lands and everything. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's like it's very I don't know how to say it. Yeah, I mean, I guess like oh, man, I completely lost my train of thought. Let's figure out where we
Yeah,
were
so
going.
you were asking me about like what you think about like the current like Dutch climate and if I was happy with
Mm,
like the growth and like yeah again the that came at the cost of like having far right like
yeah.
crazy people as well, and we also because of American politics we also have like some sort of like black nationalists now
Mm,
in our parliament as well, so
huh. Yeah.
um, I'm not happy with that
Interesting.
either. So um, yeah, so it's like yeah, the divides seem to continue to get bigger and bigger, uh,
Right.
which
Yeah.
is
Unfortunately.
kind of sad. That being said, like obviously, like I'm happy for the political party that I'm in,
Yeah.
um,
I get. I mean, it's
and to
a
say that
mix.
you already like 15 years every time you go to some sort of meeting and people don't know you and they say like hey since when did you join D66 and then it's like yeah 15 years ago so and then it's like
Yeah, it must
huh?
feel weird.
Huh? So and I already got like an invite for like long membership like
Mhm.
which day long membership day which you get if you uh, are member for longer than 10 years of like a political party. And I
Right.
was thinking like if I go there I'm gonna meet all these old fucks, right?
Yeah.
And it's gonna be so fucking weird because they probably think that I organized it or something, so that's why I'm there
Yeah,
or
that would be
something along
weird.
those lines. I think it's pretty funny if that
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's so I know in the US there is a lot of I guess volunteering for political parties, but I've never really heard. I guess the problem is in the US obviously there's only two big like political parties, so it's harder to just like join one randomly. Um but yeah, I mean, I guess maybe just going more into the details, like how did you kind of join this join the party? I mean, did you just was there like a meeting and did you just like say like, hey, I want to join, or like how's that process?
So how it works, it's like either like of course they try to get like members in the other ways, right?
Mhm.
But I just applied for membership, so
Right.
I became like member of the party, which is which you gotta pay some contribution to the political party, which isn't that much. And also a requirement within the Netherlands is that every political party needs to be democratic. there is only one party within the Netherlands who circumvent that, but therefore they don't get subsidies, which is the Geert Wilders party. So the party from the far right.
Right.
How he did that, to explain it, basically he made a company. He
Mhm.
called the company Geert Wilders Company, and he said like, okay, I gotta start a political party, and I'm gonna start it with like me and my company, because they are two
Right.
different entities. So
Oh, yeah,
he did.
I see.
That's how he started a party, and yeah.
Hmm.
So yeah, and then I became member, and then they have like meetings and that kind of stuff.
Right.
And then then you can say, once election come around, you can like say like, I want to run as well. Then you
Oh,
have like
okay.
internal like elections. So
Mhm.
you make like a list of
Right.
members. So yeah, and I was like, I was back then I was like number 9 on the list,
Oh, wow.
and 6 people got a seat,
Hmm.
and one person was sick,
Right.
uh, and they needed to still have like 2 like board members, like city board or uh, council, like underneath the council, right? So the lowest
So you were
like
there. Okay.
local thing. Yeah, and that was what I did.
So how, I mean, so it seems like you kind of had to, I guess, encourage a lot of like these older people to kind of vote for you, right? In when it came to the internal
Not
election.
really, because I was 18, and it's like really extraordinary to have such a young person in like an old like
Mhm.
local, because it's like it was a rural area,
Mhm.
so everybody moves out. Like,
Yeah. Oh, so they were like happy to like say,
they were happy to. That being said, like all these things that were, um, so they wanted to put me on a nice place.
right.
Um, but they didn't want me to be like super high,
Yeah.
which makes sense, because I'm 18.
Yeah.
uh, some of these people have been dealing with dossiers for like 25 years,
Mhm.
are like legal scholars or whatever,
Yeah.
working for the government in another capacity,
Mhm.
so they know a lot about that stuff. Yeah, and those people are like, yeah, well, yeah, it's nice that we have a young person, but uh,
Yeah.
I'd rather have this
I see.
person, right?
Yeah, I mean, I I feel like I mean, I feel like it, there would be a lot, like it would be kind of so okay, let me think of how to phrase this question properly. Um so I feel like there would be a lot of like it would be difficult to kind of get stuff done or get like a lot of I guess a lot of respect as when you're like 18 and everyone around you is kind of maybe in their 30s or whatever or even older. And I shouldn't say
Yeah,
even older. That
that's
makes it sound like 30
that.
is
Yeah,
very old.
you're correct,
But
and it was like really annoying in some way or shape, because I know that there was like one dude. At some point, he became like, uh, yeah, it's like head of the local party, and this dude was like 80 or
right.
something. So, and this dude just thought that I didn't understand anything. So he
Mm,
was like trying to explain everything to me,
right.
so it was like basically when I was in the room, he started to explaining like stuff, like really mundane like stuff.
Hmm.
And then again, I already knew more about like politics than he did, so it's like, and then it's like fucking annoying, because
Yeah.
you're the fucking on the city board or whatever you want to call it, and this motherfucker doesn't know anything about it, and he's going to explain
Condescend.
me
Yeah.
like the national terms, and only like um, national IDs around that, and I really understand that.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
I already grasp more about like the local stuff than you do. So
Yeah. I
yeah,
see.
age is really annoying uh, when it
Right.
comes to yeah, to politics.
Yeah. I feel like there's like there's probably like a level like first when you're just doing like a little bit you're engaging a little bit when you're young everyone's like oh that's so cool so glad to see young people like engaging in politics and then as you kind of like try to do a bit more and a bit more there's like a point where people start saying like I think you're too young for this and it becomes like a bit of a problem um but but yeah, I guess like in light of that, how did it feel to like work in actual local politics instead of just thinking about it or talking about it?
Well, I think it's important because like this is like something that a lot of uh, like streamers, bigger streamers also like vocalize. Uh,
Mhm.
like if it's important to go into local politics,
Right.
uh, because if if you understand what's going on like the local ground, you can have some bigger picture about like what's going on nationwide when it comes to local politics. If you don't know any of these institutions or you don't know anything what's going on, you
Right.
can talk about these grand and beautiful national ideas.
Hmm.
But once you meet with somebody that is like informed on local politics, then you will have struggle even to engage or to debate him, because this person will defeat you because he knows how things work
Hmm.
compared to you when you talk about like big ideas or something like that. So it's
Right.
I think it's really yeah, good to get yourself informed with like local politics.
So so I guess you felt like you learned a lot during those years as a
Hmm.
um since you were engaging in local politics for
Yeah,
the first
because
time.
you gotta understand that you need to know what kind of legal things are behind stuff, right? The
Mhm.
legal reasonings, and um, like you can yeah complain about like certain stuff. Um, But if
Right.
you cannot even address it, like with the procedures, or you don't know even know what's going on in a legal sense,
Mhm.
then you cannot have like either you don't even know what the alternative is at that point. You
Right.
cannot, like yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I think I think one issue with like if you don't know that much about like your local politics, you don't really know how to change things which you think are like problematic. So like for example, this was like a minor thing, but um as part of some projects and stuff, there was like this area near me which had like a lot of trash and stuff in India, right?
Hmm.
So people used to dump trash there a lot. So it took me a little while to figure out like, okay, how do I actually get the government to like set up a dumpster there, or or like just clean it up or something or the other, right? And so and it's like really weird. You have to like download this weird app, and like it's really jank, but
Yeah.
at the end of the day, like I think like just being able to understand like this is kind of how it works on a local level, um that kind of like gives you a lot more
Yeah, and
context.
sometimes to address an issue on a local level, you need to talk with like five different people, and they will all blame each other on the topic of like who should clean it up. So that's
Right.
another issue as well. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
I was just thinking like also one other issue that I was thinking about was
Mhm.
like uh you can imagine that if you like were on like a vegetarian or vegan perspective, you
Right.
might not want to shoot like certain animals down, or you don't
Mhm.
want to shoot any animals. Let's be fair.
Yeah.
So that's all good, but then and this happened in the Netherlands.
Mhm.
Then certain populations of like animals like cannot feed themselves properly anymore because they overpopulate the area.
Right.
So and that's like a major issue within the Netherlands. We had like one park,
Right.
and it became famous for every winter like 10,000 deer just died off there.
uh,
So yeah,
yeah.
and so yeah, if you think about that, it's like if you're like let's say like a vegetarian with like a really naive perspective, you would
Mhm.
say like yeah we probably shouldn't shoot those deers,
Right.
and that's
It's just
like how
hard.
I feel about like local politics in a certain sense, or like national politics. It's like, well, you do know that those things have like consequences, so you
Right.
got to
Yeah.
think more about that. And if you only have the grasp of that national level of politics, you
Mhm.
would never understand like the consequences of your actions.
Yeah, I see. Like just being able to get into the nitty gritty and understand the details,
Yeah.
at least to a certain degree, will kind of help you get a better idea of how larger policies might impact those details. Because at the
Hmm.
end of the day, I guess everything is like um yeah, it's like no one is helped just by like the general thing. They're helped by the specific stuff, like the local stuff, which is and the local stuff is helped by like the general stuff. Um,
Hmm.
but but yeah, I mean, I guess like um, I mean, I don't have um much else to ask about like the how you kind of came to your positions and whatnot. Um,
Hmm.
I guess I'm curious, like how have you been finding Twitch and stuff compared to your past experiences and things like that so far?
Yeah. So like most people think like nowadays like Twitch politics is very open and you can engage like pretty easily with like everybody on the platform. Used to be different by the way, and that's why I started streaming,
Right.
because nobody wants to talk with you if you weren't like a streamer.
Mhm.
So you couldn't go onto open panels. um, so that didn't exist, like not in the capacity that exists now. um,
Right.
so you would only get on panels based on invites and um, that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
So that being said, like yeah, very uh, back then it was like they tried to get like informed people on. It was a tight knit community with like
Right.
people that didn't try to burn bridges.
Mhm.
So a lot of like lefty streams, only basically only lefty streams. So
Right.
if it was
Yeah.
like a suck them, it was like probably the most right wing person being tolerated in the Twitch politics section. Was also at the
Mhm.
time that Hassan and like Destiny still were friends. So
Right.
you
Yeah.
can imagine that socialism was still like super cool and everybody was still like riding high on the socialist train on Twitch.
Right.
Um, so yeah, that kind of changed. So that being said, like a lot of dumb fucks, of course, on Twitch politics.
Right.
Uh, that being said, like yeah, I mean, I I don't mind. I think it's fun to engage with all kinds of people,
Right.
and I rather push back on them and then have them evaluate later on and think like, hey, either he was like even more wrong than I thought because this and that, or he was actually right. So
Mhm.
yeah, so they get more informed. So I think that's good.
I see. Yeah. Um.
So I don't know what your like personal experience is when it comes to like streaming and like the politics and that kind of stuff.
Uh. Yeah. I mean, for me, like streaming has always been a very on and off thing. For a long time. Like I started streaming, like when I was in like 10th grade. I used to do like Dark Souls and stuff. That was more like gaming stuff. And eventually I started saying, hey, I want to like talk about politics and stuff a little bit. Um, so that happened more recently, and
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, so one thing which actually surprised me about Twitch, or not just Twitch, YouTube as well, at the time was maybe like so I don't okay so I guess I think at that time I thought that Twitch was and YouTube was like really closed off. Like even if someone had like 10,000 subscribers or like
Oh
5,000
yeah.
subscribers, like if you emailed them, it's like you're emailing like a media company. Like you're not really gonna get an answer, or you're emailing like some like really big thing. So I was like pleasantly surprised to see like a lot of people actually willing to talk to me. Like even back then, when I was literally like just like 16 or whatever, just doing like random like bad YouTube videos. Um,
Mhm.
I was able to get let me see, I got two relatively big people. I want to see how big they are now. One guy called Rags who has like 300,000 subscribers now. and someone called Bulletberry, um, uh, who has 200,000 subscribers now. But yeah, I was really surprised that I was able to get. I don't know if like the problem is obviously I haven't seen other people's experiences, so I don't know if like I'm just somehow really good at writing emails, or if I'm like if this is just
It
the norm.
depends on the person. You kind of know, you kind of need to know what triggers that person.
Yeah.
So when I have some talks with like partner streamers sometimes and that kind of stuff, but
Mhm.
then I need to find like the topics that they are really interested in.
Yeah.
So when it comes to like Stardust and Destiny, if I want to reach out to them, and it needs to be like a really edgy topic, and then they're like, "Oh, that sounds interesting."
Yeah.
Yeah, so and yeah, so it's like this idea, like that, like certain streamers, you have like certain streamers that don't engage with anything
Mhm.
whatsoever. Um,
Yeah.
but generally, if there are streamers that appear to on panels, you can generally just send them a DM, and from
Yeah.
there, it's like um, if if you already have like a panel and you have like one dude on that you know is like informed or is
Mhm.
like big as well, then you can ask another bigger streamer to come on as well.
Yeah.
That's how you network, right? So
Yeah.
those kind of things, and yeah.
Yeah. I think like um in a way I think sometimes people are I'm just extrapolating from my experience, but sometimes it's like it feels weird to like message or email these people because they're like just the people on the screen, right? And it feels like very separate. Um
Mhm.
but yeah, like reaching out seems to be like a really sort of actually like, hey, yeah, that's pretty helpful, or that it's actually like more likely than you think that they can actually respond. I mean, obviously if you reach out to like someone who's actually massive, then it's probably you're not going to get a response, but most like you know, streamers
Mhm.
are just slightly bigger or whatever, you can probably get pretty easily. uh, but uh, but yeah, so I guess for me generally so far I think I've had a good time on Twitch, though I don't really, yeah, I don't know. I don't like I haven't done like that many panels or like debates or whatever. I mostly kind of
Mhm.
just do my own thing. But I think I've generally kind of enjoyed doing it, otherwise I wouldn't be doing it. Um
Mhm.
but yeah, so I guess I haven't really thought too much about it. Because mostly like for me it's just like, oh, I just do whatever like pet project I feel is interesting at the time, and keep it like try to keep things like very low commitment, um generally. But yeah, so I haven't like I never came to Twitch saying, you know, I want to like set up this like big brand or this channel or whatever. It's kind of more like, oh, you know, this is like interesting, or oh, I made this like music, so let me like post it here or whatever, right? um
Mhm.
but yeah, I mean, now I think things are slightly changing as I'm doing this like Humans of Online Politics series. But yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, of course, it's always good to do at least something, you know. I
Yeah.
mean, you can see where it goes, and like honestly, like um, I because I generally don't. I think it's interesting to interview people as well.
Mhm.
So I when I started with like the more like stuff that is more like just chatting or like politics, I started off with doing a podcast on a Sunday, which is like not political, but I
Mhm.
managed to find like political people and talk about non-political stuff. So that's what I did, and that's
That's
basically what
good.
you're doing right now. So yeah, there
Yeah,
you
to
go.
a certain
Uh,
extent.
and then I was like, well, maybe it might be interesting to like a show around like with liberals instead of just uh, these people from all the spectrums,
Mhm.
because that's a little bit of I saw that happening too much on panels
Mhm.
where all these different ideas come and go, but you cannot have like constructive like talk about that because you you disagree already on like a fundamental level.
Right.
So
Yeah.
you gotta so I wanted to have like a panel that's not circle jerky, but more zooming in on like
Mhm.
certain aspects, like certain IDs. So
Yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah, I
that's
mean, like when you talk with people who like super disagree with you, you'll inevitably end up clashing on like the basics, right? Whereas if you're talking with people who somewhat agree with you, you can kind of go more advanced.
well, the issue also is that you don't have like one person you disagree with. You have like 8 people on the
Oh yeah,
panel that don't disagree with each other whatsoever. So now you cannot talk about anything because you're just talking past each other. So
yeah.
that, that
I see what you mean.
that's yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, so I don't think I have any other questions. Do you have any other questions for me, or do you have anything else you want to talk about?
Um, when are you coming on Lib Praxis? That's the only thing. And so yeah,
Yeah,
there you go. So
yeah. Just
but
message
yeah,
me
yeah.
whenever you're hosting a show or whatever, and I'll see when I can come. This next
Mhm.
2 weeks will be busy because of finals, but other than that, I should be good. Yeah.
Oh, what's the final one?
Well, it's like all of them, but I have 3 computer science finals and 1 philosophy final.
Ah, damn.
Uh, yeah,
A lot of people are in either philosophy or computer science.
yeah,
So when it comes to trade politics, it's like a
yeah.
reoccurring trend.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, computer science and like online stuff seems to go together pretty easily, because the people who are like into computer science generally do whatever they want, like exploit online as much as possible to watch like whatever videos or enjoy whatever. And yeah, and I
mhm.
mean, philosophy is kind of helpful, I guess, in this sort of area. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I think like I feel like partially my interest in philosophy is just because of like Twitch. Like I wouldn't have gone into it otherwise. And we'll see where that takes me. But yeah,
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
yeah. All right. Yeah. Thanks for uh, coming on and talking about yourself. And yeah, I hope
Yeah,
you
and
had a
thanks
good
for
time.
having me.
Hmm.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
And I hope that the series goes well. So I'm
Yeah. We'll
cheering for
see.
you.
Great. See you around then.
Okay. Well, see you. Bye bye.